getting a booster shot.
Well, our continuing coverage of this pandemic is always available on WPBF.com for you to read more there as well, or you could put our free news app right on your smartphone. Planned protest for freedom is happening today in Cuba, and yesterday more than 1,000 vehicles drove across Miami to show their support. The protest today is expected to be the largest since the ones we saw, remember, over the summer. Now, ahead of the movement, the Cuban government has banned pro-democracy marches.
Are people that you've been in touch with in Cuba, are they scared or will they still protest?
They are scared, but a lot of people will go out to the street no matter what. They doesn't have anything to lose.
The U.S. government is watching the situation in Cuba closely. In fact, in a statement, Secretary of State Antony Blinken writes in part, quote, "We call on the Cuban government to respect Cubans' rights by allowing them to peacefully assemble."
Meanwhile, Cuban activist Junior Garcia Aguilera has been blocked in his apartment ahead of those protests. Several government supporters say they would not allow the activist from carrying out his march. Heavy police presence blocked streets to the neighborhood where he lives. Supporters of him say that they believe the government cut off his communications. 4:37 here as you're starting your Monday morning. A new Muppet in town, when the very first Asian American will make her debut on Sesame Street.
Plus, Sandy taking shape today is the big day. We know her, we love her. How long it's going to take sculptors to mold the 700 tons of sand that's been delivered right there to the West Palm Beach waterfront. You know the holidays are getting close. All right, you're getting caught up while you're waking up with WPBF 25 News Mornings.
Good day, everybody. So it's that time to track the tropics, and basically nothing happening all the way from the Gulf of Mexico into the central tropical Atlantic. Yeah, there's some spin out there, but it's all subtropical in nature, and so none of these waves really look like they have much strength, which is a great news. We only have a couple more weeks until the end of the season, November 30th.
Sandra, thank you so much. Well, confessed Parkland school shooter Nicholas Cruz heading back to the courtroom this afternoon. In the hearing, both sides are set to discuss items the defense team wants to keep out of the sentencing portion of the trial. This comes after Cruz's team asked the judge to exclude evidence related to 3 different search warrants, one relating to his cell phone, and the other 2 were for the houses where he stayed. Now, the state telling the judge to decline the defense request for evidentiary hearings on those motions.
Meanwhile, in Indian River County, opening statements are set to begin in Andrew Coffey IV's murder trial. He's accused of using his girlfriend as a human shield in a shootout with Indian River County deputies in March of 2017 while they were serving a warrant. Alteria Woods was killed. It was later found that Woods was 1 month pregnant. Caroline?
4:41 this morning, Donald Trump's former advisor Steve Bannon expected to turn himself in today. The reason the federal government says he can't claim executive privilege in the January 6th Capitol riots investigation.
Plus, overseas, Austria is going on a COVID-19 lockdown as cases rise there. The group of people, they say, cannot leave their homes. When we return.
Welcome back. Around 150 former Afghan Air Force pilots and personnel are now being processed, getting into the United States as of this morning. Now this after the U.S. airlifted a lot of pilots where they were in detention for nearly 3 months. The U.S. says negotiations to arrange the evacuation for those in that country took longer than they expected. The Department of Defense says the pilots were put on a charter flight there in Dubai.
Well, now to the investigation into the Capitol riot. Former Trump advisor Steve Bannon is scheduled to turn himself in today. He's charged with 2 counts of contempt of Congress for his alleged failure to comply with the January 6th investigation.
Just last month, the House Select Committee on the January 6th attack subpoenaed documents and testimony from Bannon. He's saying he won't cooperate, claiming executive privilege. But as our Caroline Coles reports, Bannon hasn't worked in the White House since 2017. Caroline, what's the latest?
Which is why the federal government is saying that he can't claim that executive privilege. Steve Bannon himself is scheduled to surrender to federal authorities today. Then he's going to be appearing in court. He's facing criminal charges for refusing to testify and give documents to lawmakers about the role he may have played in the January 6th riot. Now, lawmakers voted just last month to hold Bannon in contempt, pointing to his own words on his podcast January 5th as critical to that investigation. He said, quote, "You have made this happen and tomorrow is game day." But Bannon says he is not cooperating at the request of former President Trump, who claims he and former aides are shielded by that executive privilege. But Bannon's federal grand jury indictment states he's a private citizen at this point. Mark?
Caroline, thank you so much. Meanwhile, former CEO will spend now 30 days in jail for his part during that January 6th Capitol riot. A judge also ordering Bradley Ruxtales to pay $500 in restitution. Now, during the riot at the Capitol, Ruxtales threw a chair in the direction of police officers. And since that day, the government has brought criminal charges against more than 675 people. Well, more than 125 had pled guilty and more than 30 people have now been sentenced. And new this morning, a Miami-based investment group will soon manage the Trump International Hotel in Washington, D.C. CGI Merchant Group has reportedly reached a deal to buy the lease for $375 million. As part of the deal, the Trump International name will be removed from that hotel in favor of Hilton's Waldorf Astoria brand. The deal is subject to final approval by the General Services Administration because that property is technically still owned by the federal government.
Well, new this morning, the Samsung Electronics vice chairman is visiting North America. This is the first high-profile trip after serving jail time for bribery. This trip to the United States and Canada is expected to coincide with the decision on a location for a $17 billion chip plant. Lee was convicted in January of bribery and embezzlement and sentenced to 30 months in jail, including a year served before his sentence.
And an unbelievable story here. An 11-year-old girl is the sole survivor of a plane crash in Michigan that killed 4 adults. And according to the sheriff, the victims were aboard a twin-engine light commuter plane when it crashed near Beaver Island. The girl underwent chest compressions on a helicopter on her way to the hospital. The FAA and the National Transportation Safety Board, they're now investigating the cause of the crash, according to the FAA.
Says the last thing she remembers is her dad trying to save her. Incredible.
Just unbelievable. Lost all of it.
Well, the death toll, meanwhile, from the Astro World Music Festival is now at 10 this morning.
All right, so here's the latest. A 9-year-old boy who had been on life support now for more than a week after being trampled at that festival, we've learned, has died. Ezra Blount has been in a medically induced coma ever since November 5th. Now, Tristan Blount says he took his son Ezra to see rapper Travis Scott, actually stayed toward the back of the crowd so they could be safe. Blount says in a sudden rush by the crowd, though, he was pushed down and knocked out. He says when he eventually regained consciousness, he could not find his son.
447 and 5 inmates, including 2 accused murderers, are on the run in Georgia after breaking out of jail. You see their pictures here. Authorities say the men escaped late Friday night and stole a white Kia Sedona van in the parking lot. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation says that all 5 inmates have a history of violent crimes and are armed with at least 2 tasers. Authorities are warning anyone who sees them to not approach these individuals, but to call 911.
Meanwhile, 68 people are dead following a prison fight in Ecuador. Family members gathering outside the prison yesterday, waiting on news on their loved ones inside. Now, keep in mind, this is the same prison where more than 100 people were killed in September, also following a fight at the time. The Ecuadorian government blaming the violence on gang rivalries. Well, following a weeks-long COP26 climate summit in Scotland, nearly 200 nations adopting now the Glasgow Climate Pact.
So what does that mean? So the pact is aimed at keeping a key target alive, limiting warming to 2.7 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, the 10-page document lays out how the world will attempt to prevent the worst impacts of climate change. For the first time in 30 years, the document mentions phasing down the use of fossil fuels. This pact requires countries to come up with its own domestic laws and policies to cut emissions.
Developing countries have a right to their fair share of the global carbon budget and are entitled to the responsible use of fossil fuels.
Countries will meet again next year for COP27 in Egypt, and they'll discuss the progress made toward limiting warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius at that meeting. Let's go to Rhode Island. Residents in the Northeast cleaning up after the storms over the weekend. Look at some of this video. The National Weather Service saying at least 3 tornadoes hit Rhode Island and southeast Connecticut. The twisters were the first since the 1950s to strike in that area in November. Luckily, no deaths or injuries reported at this time, but of course, they'll be assessing the damage this morning. Sandra?
Alrighty, thanks, Aaron. Let's take a look at what we've got out there on First Warning Radar. Nothing. It's quiet. It is a gorgeous start to your Monday. I hope you're motivated. We're going to see really cool temperatures today. Highs only in the mid-70s. And right now, a real chill out there. It's 50 in Okeechobee. 52 in Vero Beach. Good morning. 53 on this November the 15th in Port St. Lucie. 54 for Jupiter Tequesta. 57 PBIA. And 61, the warm spot down in Boca. So a real chill. It took about a day or so for it to really settle in, but it's here for at least 48 hours or so. Temperature change from yesterday is significant, anywhere down from 7 to 9 degrees area wide. So a good plummet for us. Winds are out of the north and west, anywhere from 3 to about 10, 11 miles an hour this morning, up to about 15 this afternoon. As you can see, an abundance of sunshine. That's the constant as we make our way throughout this Monday.